Hello, welcome to the morning show with me, Martin King.
And me, Aisling O'Loughlin. On the morning show today, from servants of God to non-believers, how two men not only lost their vocations but also their faith.
I'd been there 9 years and had made an earlier kind of attempt to leave, but I wasn't strong enough to leave. But this time, it didn't matter what anybody else would say to me. I knew that deep down, I just didn't believe.
We're going to be hearing this amazing story shortly of how a religious belief was questioned and eventually abandoned.
Also today, as an energy drink is investigated as a possible factor in the death of a young girl in the US, we'll be looking at the rise in popularity of these drinks and asking what place they should have in our diet.
And with the Halloween season upon us, we are checking out one of the originals and the best when it comes to scares.
The collection itself that's on display in here is a kind of a fraction of a much larger collection. These are the highlights, so a lot of first editions of his novels, and the exhibition tracks his entire life from birth up until death.
It's an exhibition in honour of Bram Stoker, the man who gave us Dracula.
And going grey by choice. We look at the greying trend for the silver look and the questions it raises about our obsession with hair colour.
But first today, from devoting a life to God to turning your back on religion altogether, it's a massive about-face, but it's exactly what happened to Joe Armstrong and John O'Sullivan.
They had both embarked on a religious life with the Marist Fathers, but over time Joe says his whole belief system started to crumble.
The moment was, I was in counselling, and the woman, counsellor, wonderful woman, forced the issue, and she said, because I was in this constant inner battle, do I believe, do I not believe, is there a God, is there not a God, do I have a vocation, do I not have a vocation, and I was stuck on my head. So she got me out of my head and she said, but in your gut, right now this minute, do you believe? And I thought, oh, crikey, am I to decide who I am, the meaning of my universe, on the basis of my gut? And I thought, bloody hell, this is scary. But it was the moment of release from the head to the gut. And I had to accept, in my gut, I didn't believe. I was asked to go quietly, and that wasn't healthy and it wasn't good. And I did resent it a bit.
Joe Armstrong and John O'Sullivan joins us now. We'll actually talk about your leaving in just a little while, but thank you both for coming in to talk to us. We know there was a picture of you, by the way.
Yes.
That was you that we saw there. You've embraced the grey, which is something we're discussing later in the show, but that's not for now.
Suits you too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Both of you are good friends and have been for many, many years.
Went to school together.
And joined the seminary at the
Same day.
time. Okay. You were caught up in the late 70s with the Pope's visit to Ireland, so explain that to us, Joe.
The charismatic renewal as well was hugely influential, I think, for both of us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Explain to us what the charismatic renewal was.
John, you do that one.
Well, it was, I don't know what it was really, but it was a sense that religion could be amazing and exciting, and that Jesus was a personal friend or whatever of yours and could change your life and make you feel good as well. So it was very much moving away from the rules and from the here's what I stand for. It's like, here's the person who means everything to me in my life and that I want to follow his values. And
was there a lot of clapping and singing and praise the Lord?
Yes, there would have been. Oh, yeah.
So in a sense, that's part of the beauty of Catholicism, that it can, it's universal, so it can embrace the Latin Mass and the formality of that and the sacraments and so forth, but it could also embrace, as it did at that time, this kind of spontaneous prayer and, praying in tongues, whatever that was.
Relatives of yours were in the orders as well?
I had an uncle who was a priest, and he was like, I looked up to this guy big time. He had a wonderful story, because he had TB, was in hospital like for 10 years. They kind of given up on him. They did an operation, and they said, I think the operation didn't go so well, but they said, you know what, you'll be able to leave the hospital. And before he did, he wrote off to Archbishop McCann in South Africa, I'd love to be a priest, and he used to pray, Lord, may I be a priest? And this was a very inspirational story for me growing up to hear this.
Okay, and it helped to influence you.
Oh, huge, yeah, yeah. Well, I had a very religious family. But at that time, in 1960, I was born in 62, like everybody I knew was a Catholic and everybody I knew went to Mass. And it was just part of the air you breathed. You just didn't question it.
And John, would you say that you had a calling?
Whew, that's a big question. I'd say I felt I had a calling, or I feared I had a calling maybe, that I realized at one stage that, you know, that this God can call you to something, not that you just make it up, like here's what I want to do. It's more that God could say, you're the man I want to, you know, be a priest or whatever. And once I got that idea in my head, I couldn't get rid of it. And so I actually joined up, partly hoping that I would discover that God would say to me, actually, no, I've changed my mind. You're not the guy. Off you go, you know, leave.
Fly free.
Yeah, fly free, get married and live happily ever after type of thing.
And Joe, did you have that sense of a calling?
I never knew. I mean, literally from day one, there were like two parts of me. There was the part of me which had the religious interpretation of my life, and the other part of me had the secular interpretation of my life. And it was a total inner conflict for 9 years. And there were times when, you know, I would have wanted to leave, and then I think of the story of the rich young man in Scripture who goes away sad because he hadn't followed Jesus. Or then once I'd taken even temporary vows, I'd had this thing of, you know, but I've now committed myself at least to some extent to God, and if I walk away now, am I going to be unhappy? Can I leave here and be happy? So I constantly had this battle. And then, like, obedience, the vow of obedience within a religious order is a huge thing. And what it basically means is, you know, that you believe that what the superior says, or the priests who are in charge says, that is the will of God for you. And so
you found that difficult to deal with?
Extremely, yeah, because what it meant was you were meant to set aside your own judgment. You know, that you could reach a judgment, then you really weren't meant to set it aside and believe that the other guy's point of view was God's view. And I found that really hard.
John, how far in were you before you started saying, okay, wait a second, I'm not so sure anymore?
I think with my personality, I was probably always sure and never sure. That there wasn't a moment or an instant that over literally 20 or 30 years that it gradually, the story unwound for me, I suppose. That I went in very much thinking there is a God, and the God is a Christian God, and the God is the Catholic God, and all this. And then gradually that sort of weakened, and then suddenly, you know, maybe the Catholic thing isn't where I'm at, and then maybe the Christian thing isn't where I'm at, and then maybe the God thing isn't where I'm at. So I gradually unwound out of the whole story, actually.
Right.
And like, in some ways I miss it, actually, because it's a nice story, but I can't be there anymore.
It's a safe story. You're safe within it.
Well, it's safe on a certain level, yes. Yeah, it's demanding, but it can be safe on a certain level.
You came out after 9 years, and
yeah, I was 29 years.
You hung in there a lot.
Slow learner, I call myself. But,
tenacious.
Yeah. See, I liked the life, like, and the people I lived with were great, and the work we were doing was great, but the story behind it, just the vision, if you like, behind it, I just gradually lost it. So I had to leave in the end.
You lost your sister during that time?
Yes, yes.
Did that have an effect on your final decision?
I think that Joe was talking about the gut thing, that I had already maybe intellectually had serious doubts, but when my sister was ill and I realised I've no nice phrases to say to her about why she's ill, or that God is still looking after you, or that you're going to go to a better place, or I was actually just silent. I was just her brother. I wasn't religious at all in those contexts, and I found that very difficult, that I didn't have anything to say to her. Not that she was asking me to say anything, but that I suppose it crystallized it for me too, of, you know, you have nothing to say to your sister, and I was supposed to be teaching religion in a school, and I was getting so nuanced in what I was saying to the kids about religion and faith and God, that some of them literally said, well, sir, what do you believe in? You know, or do you believe in anything, sir? You know, so that it became gradually inevitable that I was in the wrong
When it came
place.
to leaving, it had been suggested to you to leave years beforehand, whereas on the other hand, when you decided to leave after 9 years, you had to leave quietly, and you weren't happy about that.
Yeah, at the time it was difficult, because, you know, obviously it's important to say goodbye. You've been living with these people for 9 years, and I was asked to go kind of quietly, you know, and so there were people who didn't know I was leaving. They thought I was going on my holidays. Now, some people knew, but more people didn't know. And it just made it harder to kind of go on to the next chapter of my life, because there were now, as I said, maybe people thought, well, he might come back or whatever. But and so maybe that was their motivation for asking me to be quiet about it. But on the other end of it, I remember when others left, they often seemed to disappear very quickly, you know, and God, where is your man gone, or what's the story there? And I assume that was something similar might have happened to them.
Joe, was it the French kiss that done it though? Do you think that was why you had to leave quietly? Tell us about the French kiss first of all.
Well, the kiss in France.
Rather than the French kiss.
Depending what way you want to put it.
I entered when I was 18. I was extremely innocent. And then I went to France on pastoral work one summer. And I met this gorgeous woman. And we had a very innocent but romantic and intense encounter.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I thought, my goodness, who could live celibacy after this?
Okay.
So that didn't help.
And you're married. You are married now.
I'm very happily married. A wonderful woman, Ruth, has put up with me for 19 years.
Yeah.
And I have 2 lovely kids, John and Sarah. John is the age that I was, 17, when I decided to become a priest.
Okay.
Scary. And Sarah is 15. So leaving cert and junior cert in the house this year.
Wow.
Okay. Your best
busy
man
household.
is sitting beside you.
That's right.
Yes, it seems a long time ago now. I was considered myself the chaplain to all the ex-Marists, and because I kept friendships with all the guys who left, because I really liked them, you know. And then I joined. I became, instead of the chaplain, I became actually part of the group. So that only happened 3 years ago.
Okay. But you're in a relationship now as well.
Yeah, I'm in a relationship since I've left, and it's great, and it's lovely, you know.
And what about, okay, so that's obviously the pros of being out. What are the cons of being out in the free world now?
In the real world.
I don't know what's real anymore.
I don't know if there are. I mean, I actually have sort of a philosophy of life now that is just that the fact that we're alive at all is amazing, and every day is a gift, not particularly from anybody, but it's a gift to be alive. And so, you know, my life is quite simple in terms financially, that I wouldn't be making a lot of money, but I live simply and I enjoy myself. And
Joe, are your children religious?
No.
They're not.
I was nearly going to say no, thank God.
So do you believe in any type of a God, a higher being or anything like that?
No.
Nope. Diddly.
No.
I'd like to, but it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
And I don't see myself as having lost my faith. I see myself as having outgrown it. I genuinely see it as a maturity.
Okay. Okay.
For me.
And your reaction to people who still believe and who still are
People can believe what they like, and people are entitled to believe what they like. And you know, I respect the person, although I mightn't respect some of what people believe. But where I would have an issue is where people try to, you know, convert me or somebody else to their way of thinking. I think that's where religions go wrong. If it's their own personal philosophy of life, that's fine. But when it tries to impose their views and values on other people, that's when it becomes a problem for other people.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Absolutely fascinating talking to you this morning.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Now, coming up after the break, after an energy drink was suggested as a